My name is Rin. I'm the writer of Diary of a Flopping Fish, and I'm also a trauma survivor. I was diagnosed with CPTSD a few years ago, which stands for Complex Post-Traumatic Stress Disorder. There's a lot of controversy of whether or not that is a subset of PTSD or if it's an actual disorder on its own, since it's not yet categorized in America with the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders that we use in the States, called the DSM-5, because it's on the 5th edition. And the International Classification of Diseases, also known as the ICD-11, have diagnosed it as a disorder on its own, not a subset of PTSD. But since there's not a lot of information on PTSD, or rather on complex post-traumatic stress disorder, known as CPTSD, I'm going to focus this video on PTSD as a whole. And this video is going to be on how PTSD affects college and some tips to get around that, because since I've been diagnosed with CPTSD, I decided to go back to college. So in addition to all of the crazy stressors that you go through when you're going back to college, I also have to find ways to get around the symptoms of my mental disorder. And it looks like I'm not alone on that, because there's a lot of students who have been found to have mental disorders. The Healthy Minds study found that in the 2020 to 2021 school year, 60% of college students met the criteria for a mental disorder. And a cross-section study of 332 higher learning facilities published May 30th, 2024 on JAMAnetwork.com found that between 2017 to 2022, the amount of students with PTSD increased 4.1%, making a total of 7.5% of students in 2022 suffering from PTSD in colleges. So, of course, the question, why is it increasing? Well, honestly, definitely part of that is because of the pandemic, because the pandemic did two things. It cut us off from our social support, which helped buffers against developing mental illness and helps alleviate stress. And we also woke up with daily panic, wondering if ourselves and our loved ones were going to die. So it kind of stunk. But other than that, any kind of traumatic event, even natural disasters, school shootings, which seem to always be in the news, and other situations like that, anything can cause PTSD. There's just a lot of different factors that decide whether or not you get PTSD or not, because most people will go through something tough and they will gain what's called resilience from that. But then there's a small number of people who go through something tough, and instead of getting resilience, they develop a stress-related disorder like PTSD. So the symptoms of PTSD can be defined into four categories, best remembered as RACE, and that's re-experiencing, which includes flashbacks, intrusive thoughts, nightmares; avoiding, where you try to avoid anything that reminds you of the trauma, but then also self-isolation too is another part of that. Changing thoughts, so guilt and shame are common symptoms with PTSD, but any kind of thoughts that are different, like you're more depressed than normal, and that sort of thing. And exaggerated, which includes the classic hypervigilance and exaggerated startle response. So a lot of these symptoms can interfere with being able to live a happy and productive life. The anxiety definitely creates a lot more brain fog. You know, you're kind of going through life sort of on survival mode. Sometimes it's like limited executive functioning going on, like how many little things can you remember when you're in panic mode all the time. But then it also impacts being able to meet deadlines and meet expectations, and sometimes being avoidant means that you're not going to class on a regular basis and you're not getting the good grades. So there's a lot of ways that having PTSD can definitely impact college. But there are a lot of ways to cope with that, too. The first thing that you should do if you are going through college and you've got PTSD is you should just get organized, because there are just so many little things that we have to remember on a day-to-day basis. And it's a lot more helpful to just be organized, have a planner. There's this fancy resource that I use called Goblin Tools. And you can go there, type in what project you have to do, say it's a video for class, and it'll actually break down all the steps that you need to take for that into a list that you can check off. And it can also estimate how much time everything is going to take you, so that you're not thinking that something's going to be real fast when actually it's going to take you like 8 hours just to get something done. So it helps you plan your day easier when you know like what's involved in these assignments and how you're going to do them. But the other thing that you should do, aside from actually having a planner in the first place, is planning backup days. So if you have a project that you need to get done, or you've got a due date for homework, don't save your homework for last minute, because you might get down to last minute and maybe you're having a meltdown that day. So plan your homework to have also rain days, just in case you try to get that homework done and you realize there's too much on your plate, or you're just having a bad day. You've got rain days, and then also that'll take the anxiety of not getting the homework done away from the situation, and you can just focus on doing some self-care, because you know that you've got other days and other times that you set aside to be able to get that homework done. It is kind of about taking responsibility. Like, you know that how you work, you know that you're not working the same way that normal people do, so you're just going to have to take responsibility for figuring yourself out and planning things accordingly. And on that note, yeah, like, don't plan too much in one day, because when you have a mental illness, it's kind of like starting the day off on half battery. So when you put things on paper, you know how much is scheduled in there, you know how much you can handle in one day. But if you don't put it on paper, you're going to have an idea of everything that you need to do, and you might end up planning too much on top of, too many things for yourself at the same time. And nobody should ever do that. So plan things out. Keep in mind to try to keep your schedule a little light and not overwork yourself. The other thing is exercise. Exercise is a big stress relief, and it also, it helps your body long term. Like any kind of diseases that we are susceptible to as we get older, the more that you exercise and the more you stay in shape, the less chance you have of actually developing those diseases. Things like high cholesterol, diabetes, high blood pressure, hypertension, coronary artery disease, all those things. All of those things people who suffer from PTSD are more susceptible to. You've got a higher risk chance of getting those. And those are all things actually that exercise and my final point, a proper diet, will actually help decrease, but then it's also good for our mental health as well. The only thing that I have seen, like people also, I've seen recommended a lot for meditating. Meditating's not really fun when you have PTSD. It can actually make it worse, because you're basically just telling your brain to be quiet, which it never is, and just kind of opening up space for all those flashbacks and things to happen. So if you're still suffering from a lot of flashbacks, don't feel bad if you're not a fan of meditating. Sometimes you just got to stay busy until you feel normal again, and that's just a thing that we do. But there is something that's called trauma-informed mindfulness meditation, and I'm not sure if that works at all, but I have seen that it's starting to become a thing, so if that's something that people want to look into, it is out there. But the final point is to make sure that you are following a healthy diet. So you want to follow an anti-inflammatory diet, fiber, greens, vegetables, fruits. You can have a little bit of everything, just everything in moderation, and just really focus on putting things in your body that are actually healthy for it, rather than falling for the simple carbs or the ultra refined things or the pizza that we can just put in the oven. We all do it, just don't do it every night of the week is really the point. But the last thing that you definitely want to make sure that you do for yourself is you want to maintain a support network. So having PTSD makes you want to self-isolate, and part of that, is guilt and shame. Like, how much can you apologize for not being able to focus on things? And, another part of that is really just being overstimulated. So, I mean, we want to give ourselves time. And if we feel like we just need to have alone time, then go have the alone time. But just don't have alone time all the time as a rule with no social life. Because, as I said before, like social support is a really great buffer against developing bad, like negative mental illness. And it can also help you heal, help you relieve stress, help you stay focused better. But you should also talk to your school's disability department, and if you have to work with your mental health professional and disability department to maybe get some accommodations to help with your illness, that's something that I think all colleges have those types of things available. And then also, be honest with your professors. If you're having trouble completing an assignment or you've fallen behind, like just kind of let them know. Because you never know if maybe they'll be able to help you out or some sort of accommodation, or maybe they can just give you an extra day on the assignment. You never know these things until you ask. And also, you want to surround yourself with good people, and you want to surround yourself by people who have the habits that you want to have, because it kind of goes for everybody. It's, if you're around a bunch of friends and those friends are all drunks, and you don't want to be a drunk, you're going to have to hang out with people who aren't drunks. Because the only thing that your drunks are going to do is they're going to drink. And then eventually you're going to end up drinking with them, or you're going to lose them as a friend because you have nothing in common. It just is what it is. So surround yourself with a good social support network. Surround yourself with good people. And also, you're going to not want to smoke cigarettes or any kind of nicotine product, because that makes anxiety and depression worse. And when it comes to alcohol, alcohol doesn't really do our body too many favors. So you really want to limit the alcohol use, especially if you're taking any kind of medications as well. Or you might not want to drink alcohol at all for, at least a length of time. But it really is something that should be enjoyed only in moderation. And we also do have to keep in mind that PTSD makes us a lot more susceptible to substance abuse. So keep in mind how much you're using of substances. If you find yourself having a drink every night, you might be relying a little bit too much on it. Or, it kind of just goes up from there. But I mean, another issue that we should keep on the lookout for too is binge eating, especially when it comes to binge eating sugar. Because I know when I quit smoking, I think I replaced the dopamine hit that I got from smoking with sugar, which it just makes you want more sugar. And the same thing, when you smoke a cigarette to get the dopamine, it just makes you want another cigarette, and that's called addiction. So you got to be mindful of your sugar and what you're putting in your body and who you're hanging around. But, I mean, these are all things that normal people should follow. But, trying to follow that healthy lifestyle, it does a lot to help us keep on the path to keep our mental health good. So I hope that this really helped enlighten people to some tactics and some things that people with PTSD might struggle with. And if you want to learn more, check out the article on diaryofoffloppingfish.com. And of course, I'm going to put some links and references that I used for this video in the comments, and thanks for watching.